When I first set foot in America, I was not the man you see now. Today, some may call me a foreman, a mentor, even a leader. But back then, I was just John, a new immigrant with a head full of dreams and a pocket almost empty. The first barrier I faced was not wire, not conduit, not even voltage. It was words, English words. If I wanted to survive here, if I wanted to become an electrician, the first thing I needed to master was the language of this land. And so, I walked into an ESL classroom at the local adult school. It felt like stepping into a martial arts sect as an outer disciple. Everyone there was from different places: Mexico, Vietnam, Ethiopia, China, and beyond. We all shared the same uncertainty, but in our eyes burned the same spark of determination. At first, English sounded like thunder crashing in my ears. The teacher said, "Repeat after me, Apple." I proudly shouted, "Apu." The class burst into laughter, and my face turned red. But instead of shame, I felt a spark ignite. Their laughter was fuel. Day by day, I drilled pronunciation, copied vocabulary, battled grammar. In those days, words like hello, good morning, and how are you were like magic spells. Each correct word unlocked a door. Step by step, my tongue grew sharper, my ears clearer, my confidence steadier. Eventually, I advanced into higher-level English. It was like being invited into the inner hall of the sect. The words grew harder. Opportunity, responsibility, determination. Not just words principles for survival in America. Teachers pushed us to write essays, to debate, to stand in front of everyone and speak. I was terrified. My hands shook, my voice cracked. But I remembered my father's advice. When you are afraid, speak as if you already know victory is yours. So I forced myself forward. By the end of that class, I was no longer hiding. I was standing tall. The language gate had opened, and beyond it lay the real battlefield, the trade school, the hall of electricians. That first day, I entered the electrical classroom. This was not like ESL. No chalk dust, no simple greetings. Instead, ladders leaned against walls. Spools of copper wire glinted like coiled snakes. Toolboxes lined the tables like weapons ready for battle. The smell of sawdust and steel filled the air. My heart pounded. This was it, the beginning of my new life. Our instructor, Mr. Harris, was a veteran electrician, his eyes sharp as lightning. He looked at us and said, "You are here to learn a trade that builds cities, lights, homes, and saves lives. But remember, electricity does not forgive mistakes. Safety is not a suggestion. It is survival." Those words struck harder than any grammar lesson. Safety, respect, responsibility. The foundation of everything. He handed us our first treasure's protective gear. Gloves, safety glasses, a hard hat. I held them awkwardly, thinking, do I really need these just to measure pipes? Harris's voice cut through my doubts. Even the simplest task can kill. Wear them always. Right. That day the vocabulary rained down like secret techniques of cultivation. Gloves, safety glasses, hard hat, pliers, screwdriver, measuring tape, hacksaw, conduit bender, voltage tester, wire stripper. Each tool was more than just a name, it carried a story. Harris told us of workers who had cut wire with the wrong tool and ended up scarred. He showed us how to test a wire with a voltage tester, warning again, never trust a wire. Always verify. Electricity is invisible, but deadly. Then came my first mistake. I reached toward a wire sticking out of a junction box, ready to move it aside. "Stop," Harris thundered. I froze. He placed the tester on the wire. The screen lit up live current. My stomach dropped. My life had nearly ended before it began. That fear etched itself into my bones. But so did the lesson. Never assume. Always verify. The class didn't stop. We drilled vocabulary like spells of survival, circuit, breaker, fuse, panel, outlet, conduit, insulation, resistance, current, voltage, power. Each term was explained in simple English, then tested. I scribbled notes furiously as if engraving techniques into my cultivation manual. At one point, Harris pointed at me. "John, what is the right tool for cutting conduit?" My mind raced. I blurted, saw. The class chuckled. Harris shook his head. Not just any saw, the hacksaw. Remember this? Sharp is not enough. Right tool, right result. Another time he asked, "What do you wear before handling tools?" "Nervous," I shouted. "Shoes?" The class roared with laughter. Harris raised his eyebrows. "Shoes are good, but you also need gloves, glasses, and a hard hat. Protect yourself. Your family wants you home every night." Even in my embarrassment, I felt a strange joy. Each mistake was like failing a practice duel, but gaining experience. With every correction, my cultivation grew. The day ended with a quiz, not just a test of memory, but of survival. Harris asked 3 simple questions. "What is the rule about wires?" I answered. "Always test before touching." "What is the right tool for cutting conduit?" "Hacksaw." "What protects your eyes?" "Safety glasses." Each correct answer was like passing a gatekeeper. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. Walking home that night, the city lights shimmered like stars of destiny. My backpack was heavy with books, my mind heavier with new words, but my heart was light. I realized I wasn't just learning tools and wires. I was building something bigger. Discipline, responsibility, survival. This was more than a trade, it was a path. It's a path of an electrician, the path of a cultivator. That night, I looked at my gloves, my glasses, my hard hat, the humble treasures of an apprentice. They weren't just equipment. They were my first cultivation artifacts. And deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new words. But today, I had taken my first true step. From ESL outsider to apprentice electrician, from laughter at mispronounced words to standing before live wires. This was the day I began to cultivate my path in America. When I returned to class the next day, my gloves and hard hat still felt brand new, almost like props in a stage play. Yesterday, I had survived my first encounter with live current, and the memory of that glowing tester still haunted me. My stomach dropped every time I thought about it. But today was different. Today, Mr. Harris said, "Put the tools aside. Before you bend conduit or cut wire, you must first train your mind. Knowledge is your first defense." The desks were pushed together, and on the board was a list of words that looked more frightening than any weapon in a martial arena. The words stretched across the chalkboard: current, voltage, resistance, power, conductor, insulator, circuit, fuse, breaker, panel. 10 words, yet they felt like 10 mountains. Today, Harris said, you will begin learning the language of electricians. Without it, you are blind. With it, you can see. I stared at the word resistance as if it were a riddle carved into stone. My classmates whispered among themselves. Some already knew these terms in their own languages, but for me, each word was new. I wrote them down carefully, the letters looking like mysterious runes in my notebook. The lesson began with current. Harris drew a river on the board, water flowing between 2 banks. Think of current as the movement of electricity, like water flowing through a riverbed. He tapped the chalk. The unit is the ampere. Say it, ampere, the class echoed. Again, louder, ampere. I felt my voice trembling, but I joined in. For a moment, it felt like a chant in a martial sect, a spell that gave shape to invisible power. Then came voltage. Voltage, Harris explained, is the force, the push, like the height of a waterfall. Without it, current cannot flow. He wrote the symbol V on the board. Measured in volts. Say it, volts. Oh, we shouted. By now, my notebook looked like a war manual. Current, voltage, resistance. Harris turned, his eyes sharp. John, tell me, what is voltage? My heart skipped. The class turned toward me. I stammered. Voltage is the power? The class chuckled. Harris shook his head. Not wrong, but not right. Voltage is not power. Voltage is the push. The difference in potential. Write it down. My face burned. I scribbled furiously. Voltage equals push, but inside I smiled. I had been wrong, yes, but I was learning. Each mistake was a step forward. We moved on to resistance. Harris held up a piece of rubber tubing. Electricity doesn't always flow easily. Resistance is what slows it down. It is measured in ohms. Say it. Ohms. The word felt strange on my tongue, like chanting in another language. The class repeated it until it stuck. Power. This, Harris said, is the result current multiplied by voltage. The work done. Measured in watts. He copied the formula into my notebook. P equals V times. My head spun. Math had never been my friend, but Harris's voice carried weight. Electricians who don't respect power end up stories in the newspaper. Don't be a story. The room grew quiet. We all felt the gravity of his words. At break time, I practiced the words under my breath. Current, voltage, resistance, power, conductor, insulator. My classmate Diego, from Mexico, laughed and said, "John, you sound like you're casting a spell." "Maybe I am," I replied. "These words might save my life," he grinned. "True, better than any magic." We returned to class, and Harris introduced the idea of the circuit. He drew a loop on the board, a complete path. Electricity only flows when the circuit is closed. Open it, and the flow stops. He pointed at us, like you're training. If you quit halfway, the circuit is open. No power flows. Only when you close it, only when you see it through, do you succeed. That hit me deep. I thought of all the times I had wanted to give up in ESL in speech class, even yesterday when fear gripped me. If I quit, the circuit of my life would remain broken. I had to close it. Then came the quiz. Harris loved to spring tests without warning. Question 1, he barked. What is the unit of current? Ampere, we shouted. Question 2, what is the formula for power? My hand shot up. P equals V times I. Good. Question 3, what is resistance measured in? Ohms, the class answered in unison. Harris grinned. Better. But now, let's see how you handle real application. He pulled out a small training board panel with wires, a switch, a bulb, and a fuse. He connected the wires, then flipped the switch. The bulb lit up. This is a simple circuit. But what happens if I pull out the fuse? The bulb went dark. Why? Harris asked. I raised my hand. Because the circuit is open? Yes, he said, nodding. Electricity is unforgiving, but predictable. Learn the rules, and you master it. Ignore them, and you suffer. By the end of the day, my notebook was filled with new terms: fuse, breaker, panel, outlet, conduit, insulation. Each one like a sword added to my arsenal. I was exhausted, but my heart was alive. On the way home, I repeated the words under my breath: current, voltage, resistance, power. My tongue stumbled. My accent thick, but every word felt like a brick in the foundation of my new life. I wasn't just learning vocabulary, I was learning survival. That night, I sat at my desk, gloves and hard hat beside me, and I whispered the words again. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight I felt a strange pride. I had not been defeated by words. I had bent them, shaped them, and made them part of me. This was only episode 2 of my journey, but already I felt the circuit closing. The power was beginning to flow. Previously on the electrician's cultivation journey, John faced his first real challenge inside the trade school. He stepped into a world filled with tools he couldn't name. Wires that looked harmless, but carried deadly power, and classmates who laughed at his mistakes. But with every stumble, John learned faster. He discovered the rule that electricity never forgives mistakes, and he survived his first close call with a live wire. In the end, he passed the small test of safety, or in not only his teacher's approval, but also his very first cultivation treasures: gloves, safety glasses, and a hard hat. Now, John must move forward into even tougher lessons and unexpected trials. The classroom felt different that morning. The chatter was low, the air heavy. Mr. Harris entered slowly, holding a clipboard like a general carrying a battle scroll. His boots thudded against the concrete floor. He scanned us with sharp eyes and said, "Apprentices, the time for theory is over. Today you face your first trial." My stomach tightened. I had barely survived the first week, still waking up in the night with the echo of his words. Never assume, always verify. What kind of trial would he throw at us now? On the tables lay chaos coils of wire, conduit pipes, switches, bulbs, screwdrivers, and pliers scattered like battlefield weapons. The task was simple in words but deadly in execution. Build a safe circuit. Make the bulb shine. Do it by the book. If it doesn't work, you fail. If it sparks, you fail. The room erupted in murmurs. Spark, fail, my heart hammered. I glanced at my gloves and hard hat, and for the first time they didn't feel like a burden, they felt like armor. We rushed forward. My hands trembled as I grabbed the measuring tape. Too shaky, my conduit was cut an inch short. Laughter erupted from a classmate behind me. Careful, rookie? Gonna build a dollhouse instead of a circuit? Heat rushed to my face. Another time my screwdriver slipped and clattered to the floor. The noise echoed like a gong announcing my incompetence. The smirks, the whispers, it was the same feeling I'd had in ESL when I mispronounced apple. But instead of shrinking, something stirred inside me. That humiliation was fuel. Slow down. Breathe, John. Focus. I measured again. Steady this time. The conduit fit. I tested the dangling wire with the voltage tester. It blinked red live. My chest tightened, but my hand didn't flinch. I called out to my teammates, "Don't touch this one yet. It's live. Electricity is invisible, but deadly." They paused. The same rookie they mocked was now the one protecting them. Something shifted in their eyes. Respect? Surprise? Maybe both. Mr. Harris prowled between the tables like a lion. Suddenly he barked, "John," I froze. "Why do we always test before touching?" I forced my voice steady. "Because electricity is invisible and deadly." A small nod. Another question. "Which tool cuts conduit?" "Hacksaw, sir." "And before touching tools?" "Gloves, glasses, hard hat?" This time, no stuttering, no guesswork. My answers hit like strikes in a duel. The laughter from before was gone, replaced by silence. Our group worked, step by careful step. Wire stripped clean, conduit joined, connections tightened. Then, the final moment, we flipped the switch. For a heartbeat, nothing. My lungs froze. Then flash. The bulb glowed white and steady. Cheers exploded around me. My teammates slapped my back. For the first time, I wasn't the rookie or the outsider. I was John, the apprentice who made the light shine. Mr. Harris approached, his face unreadable. He stared at the glowing bulb, then at me. Finally, he placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Not bad, John. You're beginning to understand. Safety, discipline, responsibility. Without these, with them, you just might." Walking home under the neon glow of the city, I replayed the moment in my head. The laughter, the fear, the bulb lighting up. My gloves, my glasses, my hard hat. They were no longer just equipment. They were my first cultivation artifacts. This was my trial by fire. I survived, and I knew the real battles were still waiting. John took a deep breath, staring at the worn-out safety gloves in his hands. Today, he had faced a tense quiz, nearly embarrassed himself again, but in the final moments, he pulled through and earned the respect of his classmates. The classroom slowly grew quiet, but the pounding in his chest reminded him this was only the first trial, and he had just managed to cross it. He knew deep down that he was still just a beginner disciple. Safety was only the opening gate. The real test lay ahead. The arsenal of tools, each one a weapon that could make or break an electrician. Thinking about what was coming, John couldn't help but smile nervously, caught between fear and anticipation. Next time, we step into the world of tools. Every plier, every drill, every conduit bender, these are the weapons of an electrician. Will John survive his first tool trial, amid the laughter of his classmates? Or will a mistake turn into an unexpected breakthrough? Stay tuned for EP4, The Trial of Tools.